Sports are our escape. We look to our favorite athletes as modern-day gladiators that go to battle for us week in and week out. We come to love them, and they become part of our lives. We sometimes forget that they are regular, fragile people just like us. We're here to tell you about the person inside the athlete. These are their stories. I present to you the 716 Sports Chronicles.
The 716 Sports Podcast presents the 716 Sports Chronicles. My name is Bill Kenny. I'm joined today by Eric Wolschlager and Justin Ehrig, and today we're talking about the story of Alex Neutz, in his own words. Alex, a star wide receiver for both Grand Island High School and the University at Buffalo, briefly in the NFL, and someone who has struggled with the issues of addiction and substance abuse. This is something that is becoming more and more common for people younger and younger, and something that society is dealing with on a daily basis. Today, what we're going to allow Alex to do is tell the story in his own words. We'll be providing brief narration, but this is Alex's story, and we wanted Alex to share his story. It can be difficult at times, but Alex has done a really nice job with bringing everything together and explaining things in a very relatable way. So without any further ado, here's Alex Neutz.
Hi, my name's Alex Neutz. I'm here to talk about mental health, depression, anxiety, and addiction in today's world of athletics and really in the world in general. For myself personally, it really started when I was young, 5-6 years old. I knew right away there's some kind of disconnect, something never felt right. I remember t-ball, house soccer. I know there's nerves and getting nervous, but, for me, it was a whole different kind of nerves. I remember t-ball, my mom, dad, the coaches, they had to bribe me to get out of the car. We'll give you a Beanie Baby if you go to practice, do this. Those were the cool toys back in my day. But yeah, it was just always this extreme fear performing in front of other people. I just remember I would be sick to my stomach, didn't want to do it. But everybody else my age was doing it. So why aren't I? Or, don't want to let my parents down. They want me to be out, being athletic, doing this and that. And I was just always very socially closed off, socially awkward, socially anxious. Did not have a lot of friends growing up, But yeah, at 5-6 years old, you don't know what anxiety is. You don't know what depression is. So you just kind of push through it and keep going.
So we spoke with Alex's mom.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Neutz.
And we asked her if she was able to sense any of his social anxiety when he was a kid.
Honestly, I didn't know about any of that anxiety. He was always sensitive. He was sensitive, but he was driven and he was a people pleaser. He always wanted to make you happy. He was a perfectionist. We got, sorry. I have to take a break for a minute. I just didn't see it, I guess. I don't know if I was blind to it. I just didn't see the anxiety in playing sports at a young age. Everybody was just, that was easy. It wasn't until
For Alex, the struggle continued.
So, it's really continued all the way. The next main example I would say is, 12, 13 years old for modified basketball. I just finished a rec league or whatever like that. And, my parents were excited. Supposed to try out for the modified team. It was the first year I could. And I was ready. had my basketball shoes, clothes, everything like that, ready to go to tryouts after school. But the whole day I was sick to my stomach. What if I fail? What if I don't make it? What if I embarrass myself? What if I let my friends down and don't make the team? And that fear and anxiety that most people feel took myself to a personal new level, where I felt depressed, felt overwhelmed, and just wanted anything I could do to avoid the situation. I ended up just skipping the tryouts altogether. Didn't go. I just called my mom, told her I wasn't feeling good. Maybe I'll try next year. Maybe, it just wasn't for me this time, and just never went. And same thing, at 12, 13 years old, though, you don't really know what anxiety is, depression. How do you call your mom and be like, I just felt super overwhelmed and, started, losing my mind a little bit. So I just kind of pushed it aside and just kept pushing along there. So then...
And the whole time, Alex's mom had no idea that he wasn't interested in playing sports at all.
No, I thought he liked sports. I mean, he was athletic. We tried everything. There were certain sports that he didn't care for. He didn't want to stay with t-ball, basketball. Basketball he did in high school, and he was very good. I think football in high school he was good. I thought he enjoyed it. I didn't think there was any problems until after he hurt his back, and that's when things got difficult.
After failed attempts at basketball and t-ball, Alex finally found a sport he enjoyed.
I found my first true love with sports with volleyball. I loved it. I actually enjoyed it, and I looked forward to going to it every day. It was fun. I think that was the biggest thing, I never really had fun playing sports and performing, but that was just, it was a different thing. Like, I felt like a little kid when I was out there, how a kid should feel. But, right away, 9th grade, 10th grade, right in the early stages there, I was in gym class with the gym teachers who were the football coaches. And I love them, they're still with me to this day, still talk to them all the time. But they wanted me to play football. You said, watch me in flag football, fast, tall, can catch everything, trying to get me to try out for the team. And it's like my mindset, instead of being like, no, like, you love volleyball, that makes you happy. Because, I got called up to varsity as a freshman, so it wasn't like I was just there to, be there. Like, I was a good player that had potential. But at the same time, I didn't want to let the gym teachers down. They were the cool guys. Everybody wanted to be on their good side. Didn't want to let my friends down that did play football. So instead of kind of focusing on my future and what made me happy and what I wanted, I said, well, this will impress the gym teachers, and this will, impress my friends, and this will make more people happy and excited. So I just quit what I wanted to do and what I loved and said, I guess football it is.
We reached out to Alex's high school football coach,
Mike Stauffer, and I'm one of the coaches at Grand Island,
and asked him a few questions about Alex.
I'm one of the phys ed teachers at the high school, and so we had Alex in our gym classes at the time. Me and the head coach, Dean Santorio, we kind of had a combined class, and we were doing some flag football outside, and we knew Alex played volleyball the previous year, and so we're doing, we started out with playing some flag football, and all of a sudden this kid's making plays all over the field and kind of, head and shoulders above everybody else and diving for catches and doing everything. And so at the moment, we're like, man, this kid is definitely different than most kids, and he could, he's got the size, he's got the speed and everything else, and we thought that he could help us in football. So obviously, as being football coaches, we kind of approached him and said, is this something you would ever consider doing? We know you play volleyball, but would you ever make the change and come over to football? And I think that piqued his interest a little bit, whether it was just the attention that he was getting from us, or if it's something he really wanted to do. So we started thinking about it, and obviously we kept on him to see if he would continue to do that. And then finally he, decided to make that switch over from volleyball and give, football a chance. We said, just give it 1 year, see if you like it. If you don't, you go back to volleyball, no harm. And so, once he started coming with us on the football field, obviously we saw that this kid had a special talent and could do, some really nice things, especially at the level that he was at. His first year was as a sophomore, and he played, extremely well as a sophomore. So we knew that he had potential to be something really good. You know, athletically, he was definitely gifted. So you can always tell a kid that, you know, kind of has that it factor, and, you know, he definitely had that it factor.
We asked Coach Stauffer whether Alex struggled with the decision to quit volleyball and join the football team.
He was pretty receptive, actually. I think, again, when you have two football coaches, you're young like that, you know, approach you about playing, I think it always piques someone's interest. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, again, everybody wants to be wanted. Everybody wants that attention. And I think that helped that here he is, you know, the two varsity coaches or his phys ed teachers are kind of approaching him to come out. So he was very receptive, you know, to the idea, and kind of said, well, you know, I got to talk to my parents about it and then see what they think. And then, you know, kind of go from there. He liked volleyball. He was successful at volleyball, but again, I think it's a draw of the football field and, you know, playing Friday nights and doing that type of thing that, you know, I think ultimately draws you to the sports. And when you're that good of an athlete and you know you can compete at that level, I think that helps.
Alex has a slightly different interpretation.
Being athletic, tall, fast, you know, it was flag football and gym, everything, you know, with the gym teachers, you know, being the football coaches, you know, just everybody telling me, you know, like, oh, like, you'd be so good at football, you'd be such a good wide receiver, you know, you can be so great and, you know, help the team and this and that. And, you know, and obviously, you know, knock volleyball and, you know, volleyball is not the sport for you and, you know, all those lovely sayings and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, just like I said, I didn't want to let the gym teachers down. I wanted to be on their good side. You know, they were the cool guys at the school. You know, all the older football players, you know, they were the popular kids in class, and I wanted to be, you know, on their good side and impress them. So like I said, yeah, instead of focusing on, you know, who I was and what I wanted and enjoyed, you know, it was like, you know, I want to impress this guy, or I want to impress Coach Santorio and Coach Stauffer. And, you know, I want to, you know, make everybody happy at the same time. And it was, trust me, it was, you know, caused a lot of anxiety and depression, having to tell my volleyball coach I wasn't playing anymore, because I never wanted to let anybody down. Like, that was my biggest issue, is no matter what, I just couldn't let people down. But yeah, just all that, you know, this is the right decision for you, kind of just being told, like, this is going to be what you want to be going forward. Just kind of kept persuading me, and like I said, didn't want to let people down, number one.
Coach Stauffer disagrees.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he said he felt pressured. I mean, I don't think we ever pressured a kid into doing anything. Whenever we approach someone, you know, we always say that, you know, we think you could be, you know, we think you'd be successful if you come play football for us. And, you know, we always still ultimately put it in the kids' hands and the parents' hands on what their decision is. And we've always told, even some of our better players, we've always said, we're not going to beg anybody to play this sport. We're not going to beg you to be on our team. We're still going to have a season. We're still playing 8 games. We're still going to go to the playoffs. You know, if you want to play, if you don't want to play, of course, we're going to try to steer you in the right direction. But I don't feel as if we ever pressure anybody. He might have felt outside pressure from, again, being a elite athlete at that time. He might have felt pressure to stick with the sport or make that change over. Because again, football is your high profile sport. How many people go watch the volleyball games on a Tuesday night compared to who goes and watches the football team on a Friday night? You know what I mean? It's just, I think the draw of the football is always going to be bigger than those other sports. So, you know, when he says pressure, you know, of course we want him to play football. Do we feel as if we ever pressured him into it? I don't feel as if we ever were that type of coaching staff that we would, you know, again, threaten or pressure or something like that. He might have felt pressured that, again, the expectations of being a good football player and doing the things that he can do, I think the pressure might have come from that way. But I don't know if it's direct pressure from us saying, hey, you got to do this. You'd be crazy if you didn't play football. You know, you got to give up volleyball. You know, you're too good. I mean, I wouldn't say we'd ever approached him in that sense.
For Alex, there was still some regret in his decision to make the switch.
And it was immediate, you know, like, regretted the decision right away in my mind, you know, before I even tried out for the football team. It was like, what did I do? Did I make the right decision? Is this really what I want to do? Just always questioning myself, second guessing. And like at the time, I always tell people it's probably the best and worst decision of my life, because yeah, I went on to have a great, successful career, you know, broke records and everything like that, and Western New York for as far as receiving yards and everything. Broke the school records for touchdowns, catches, all that. But still never happy at the end of the day. Never really was satisfied with my decision, and always wanted more. Always needed to do more to impress people. Just was never, like I said, satisfied. But yeah, I mean, so as far as, that first trial for football, in the weight room over the summer. So I just finished my freshman year of high school, my sophomore year summer there, that transition period. I was in the weight room working out. I'd never lifted weights in my entire life. So I had no idea what I was doing, but I was squatting and I pulled something. I felt something in my back go, and I was miserable, couldn't breathe, was in so much pain. And at that point, I went home, told my mom, she realized how much pain I was in, and she gave me a pill, and, she said, this will make you feel better. And to myself at 15 years old, no big deal, it'll, aspirin, ibuprofen, I'm sure that's all it is. And in her defense back then, there wasn't the, same, I guess, information there is now in education on the dangers of painkillers and drugs and stuff like that, that there are today. But it turned out she gave me my first hydrocodone at 15 years old, just innocent enough. And it was crazy because at 15 years old, I can remember driving to my friend's house after taking it, and I was just looking out the window in my own world. And for the first time, and I couldn't even remember how long, there was just nothing. There was no anxiety, no depression. I was just almost felt freeing, I was just numb to everything. And I could just remember looking out the window wow, if I could feel like this every single day, life would be so easy. I can do this. I can do football. I can do whatever. But obviously at 15 years old, can't find painkillers wherever, and you can't find drugs wherever. But it really, almost changed my mindset, just from that one time. But, kept going with football in high school. Like I said, I had a great career. I was lucky enough to break the records, but, from the outside looking in, I should have been the happiest kid around, star athlete, local community star, got good grades, pretty much straight A's in high school. But like I said, I was never satisfied, never happy. People always be like, what are you so down about, or what are you so depressed about? People have it so much worse than you. My parents stayed together. I never got divorced. There's no anything like that in the house. But yeah, it was just always this dark cloud that just followed me wherever I went.
For many people that suffer with anxiety and depression, it can be difficult to pinpoint a cause. And that's how Alex felt as well.
Yeah, I think I would just be like, I don't know. I would literally tell him, I don't know what it is, because there was no answer for it. It's just not happy, or, I just kind of avoid the situation altogether, because there really was no true explanation for it, because I still don't understand. To this day, I don't understand depression, and I don't understand anxiety and where it comes from and why it comes on. But yeah, I mean, that was just the toughest thing. It was just a daily battle with myself to, keep going, push through. It'll get better eventually. But yeah, I mean, the school part was easy, but just something with sports and performing in front of people that always, really brought it on. And it was nice though, because at the same time, like I said, where it was the best and worst decision, football also, really opened up my relationship with my dad for the first time. So it brought a lot of positives, but then I put more pressure on myself to make him proud, make him happy. And then I started getting attention from schools, and I thought that was cool. And if I get a scholarship, everybody's talking about if you can do this and if you can do that, and just made myself keep going. I barely hung out with people my junior and senior year. I just focused on personal training and trying to get to the next level, all for a dream or goal that I didn't even want at the end of the day. It was I was doing this solely for the reason of impressing other people and showing other people that I can do it. Not what I wanted at all. And my prime example of it is when my coaches told me, so probably would have been November of my senior year of high school. We had just finished our football season, and Coach Santorio came up to me and said, good news, UB was just here. They're going to call and offer you a scholarship tonight. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. And anybody in the right mind would be like, that's amazing, free school, going to play Division I football. And in my mind, I was like, I can't do this. I was like, high school football is fine, but I didn't sign up for, another 4 or 5 years of this. It was fun. But I never envisioned it going any further. And then, but right away, you know, I saw everybody else's reaction and how happy they were. So I was like, well, I guess I should be happy too, because no kid in their right mind is going to turn down a Division I scholarship. No kid at 17 years old to be like, no, I'm good. I don't need free school. I don't need to play Division I football. And it was like that night, you know, they had a party, like literally set it up in a matter of like a couple hours. There was a signing, or I guess what you want to call it, a party for this phone call. You know, my coaches were there, friends, family, just everybody, all excited, high-fiving. I'm just sitting there like terrified, like what did I get myself into? Why did I agree to this? Because in high school it was bad enough with just friends, family, and Grand Island. Now I got all of Western New York, all of the 30,000 people that go to UB, and just a whole new audience of people that I need to impress and put on a show for and act like I love this game. That because, you know, these coaches, they want guys that love the game and only care about the game. And I was the furthest thing from that.
Adrian also remembers Alex coming to her about the pressures he was feeling.
Yes, he did. He used to call, especially, well, I can remember his freshman year before the spring game. And then there were other times, like when he would go into camp and, you know, like when the season started, and he had lots of anxiety about his performance. What if I drop the ball? You know, am I going to let down mom and dad, or am I going to let down Grand Island? Am I going to let down Western New York? You know, yeah, there was a lot of pressure playing in front of the hometown. I think it would have been a lot easier if he'd played football, you know, out of state, and he wasn't around. Yeah, he used to call, and I would just try to calm him down and tell him, you know, we loved him, and that, you know, just do the best that you can. That's all you can do.
While those pressures were hard on him, he tried to use them as motivation to help him push through.
Yeah, it was just like I said, I was just feeding off everybody else's excitement and saw how happy my dad was and proud he was, and that fueled me more. Like, okay, like you got to do it for him, you got to do it for this person. My coaches believed in me, so I got to do it for them. But it was never, is this what you want, Alex? Like, is this what you want at the end of the day? It was more like, wow, you really did it this time to myself when I was, you know, behind my shadows and by myself and alone. Like, what did you do? What kind of mess have you created? Like, you're lying to everybody. And like I said, it's just a constant, everyday struggle of second-guessing myself, questioning myself. And then a few months after that, you know, I mean, at that point, I was already basically signed, sealed, delivered. I'm going to UB. I'm going to play football there. And now I get my wisdom teeth out for, you know, just normal procedure. Every kid, a lot of kids, I guess not everybody does it, but, you know, a lot of people get their wisdom teeth out. I got them taken out, and this was my second experience with painkillers this time. You know, get them out. Here's your painkillers. They don't warn you about addiction and if you take them too much and this and that. They just give you the bottle and say, here you go. And then right away, it was like that same feeling at 15 years old. Like the second I took the first one, like, wow, like there's nothing, no anxiety, no depression. I was like, I'm good. Like I can do UB, you know, I can play football. I'm fine. And just right away, just completely took over my body and like, this is all I need. Like, this is my answer. I just need these pills right here. And it was kind of the same thing, though. At 18 years old, I can't just find drugs and painkillers wherever I go. But it even more convinced myself that there is an answer. It's not to talk about it or bring it up. It's to figure out how to numb it. And I figured out a way. And that's like probably the biggest thing. Like, 'cause I remember, like, you know, social media and stuff like that, the smaller ones we had in high school, like AOL stuff. You know, if you were looking for attention, or if you were depressed or had anxiety, you were looking for attention. Like there was no reason I should be sad or depressed. I was looking for attention. So instead of talking about it, I chose to hide it and just bury it and try to deal with it on my own terms. And by all accounts at that point, the painkillers were the best option for me. But like I said, don't have access to them, not able to get them at that age. So then I go to UB, and like I said, once again, football is great to me. Brought me amazing relationships, amazing friendships, brought me closer to my dad, parents, family, everything. But at the end of the day, like I was just miserable as ever on the inside. I mean, I remember thinking of reasons to how to get hurt to not go to practice, or how to do this to avoid the weight room. It was just a constant cloud that literally followed me wherever I would go. And the guys in the locker room, they knew I was miserable. You know, they could see, like, I never smiled in the locker room. I never talked in the locker room. Didn't want to be there. Just went in there, did whatever I had to do, and then got out of there as fast as I could. But yeah, so my junior year, or sophomore year, was redshirt sophomore year, I was having a great season, broke my wrist. Most people would be depressed. You know, oh, your season just ended, it's over. And that just shows where my mindset was at that point. Like, I was excited. I was like, I'm done. It's like, I don't got to play anymore. I don't got to, put on the show. But with the wrist injury came surgery. And then with the surgery came painkillers again. And this time there was no, this is what happens if you get addicted. This is what's going to happen, if you take too much or don't take much prescribed. And right away I already knew, these are the answer back then. Like, this is going to be the answer now. And right away, I didn't care about the pain in my wrist or my back. I was taking them for anxiety and depression and to numb myself from the world. Except this time it was different because there's painkillers everywhere in the football locker room. There's 25, 30 kids a year having surgery, getting painkillers for this or that. So I pretty much at that point had almost like endless accessibility to them. Other guys who didn't need theirs saying, take mine, like, you need to be on the field. Like, and I would just milk it like, oh yeah, my back's bothering me. I need these. I need these to keep going. I need these to perform.
Alex offered his unique perspective on the prevalence of painkillers in the locker room.
Because at first, like, I felt uncomfortable asking, but then there was, some guys like, you need these, take mine or take some of mine. And then, after like, they gave me some, I'd be like, yeah, like, you're right. Like, I do need them. Like, I do need to be able to perform and play. So now I was like, ask a lot of the younger guys who had surgery because, I'm like the older guy and the star on the team and, I need them. So they were just, no problem. Here you go. And then it was just, other guys who were close to me. My roommate had like 5 knee surgeries. So he was always giving a lot of his to me. And it's like they don't monitor them. Like I said, they just give you the bottle of painkillers to 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and they didn't tell my mom or dad they're giving me painkillers for my surgery. It was just, okay, here you go. It's not like the training staff's monitoring how I take them. They just give you the bottle and off you run.
Adrian was taken aback by the access the players had to the painkillers.
I was shocked that they just gave him a bottle of pills, that all the kids were given pills, and that they were sharing them. I was shocked.
The availability of painkillers in the locker room was the catalyst for Alex's addiction.
And, starting with, my sophomore year, junior year, I was taking them probably 2 to 3 times a week. Nothing too crazy or dangerous or anything like that. But it was definitely the start of a negative trend for sure. And then going into my senior year, I was taking them probably 6-7 days a week. Like, I always tell people, I'll watch highlights and film and this and that from back then because I don't remember almost like any play from my senior season besides the ones I can see on highlights, just because I really wasn't a day that I was sober throughout that whole campaign. And it all started with my girlfriend of 5 years broke up with me 3 days into my football camp, and she was the only one who knew my depression, knew my anxiety, knew what was going on. So when I lost that, my one outlet, I was completely lost. I went from like 208 to 192 in about 3 days. Like, didn't eat, didn't care, didn't do anything. I went and talked to my coach, Coach Quinn at the time. I told him how much I was struggling, told him how bad it was, told him I just need a couple of days off. I need to get counseling. I need help. I just need anything other than football right now. And his response was just, no, you need football. You need your brothers, and we have Ohio State to get ready for in 3 weeks. That's all you need.
Jeff Quinn is currently the offensive line coach at the University of Notre Dame. 716 Sports Podcast reached out 3 separate times for comment and received no response back. After this first attempt to reach out for help failed, painkillers began to take a stronger hold in Alex's life.
At that point, I was like, well, if you don't care and you're not going to help me, then I'll just help myself again, because I'm trying to open up about my issues. I'm trying to talk about my depression. I'm trying to talk about these issues. And it was just like, no, you just need football. You just need to forget about it. You need to focus on what's important. So at that point, I was like, okay, then I'll help myself, and just went all in with the painkillers, like I said. And that's really when I started taking them every day that I could. Like every day that I could get them, I was taking them. And it was, like I said, it wasn't that hard. So it was at least 6 days a week at that point. And, that continued throughout my senior year. Like I said, really wasn't sober much of it. I remember we went to the bowl game that year. And I probably, for like a 4-day road trip, brought like 40, 50 pills with me just to get through 4 days. And that was my answer. And like, by everybody else's judgment and account, it was the first time I was probably enjoying football and having fun in their eyes. But really, I was just numbing it and, fixing it with self-medication. And it didn't end there. And at that point, like, because my plans were I was done with football, whether the NFL was calling or not, I was done with football to my senior year. That was the plan I had. But then when, like I said, my girlfriend left me, I said, screw it. I'll prove her wrong. I'm going to go to the NFL. I was talking to an agent, so now I had to impress him. My dad was telling guys at work, I was going to get drafted. I was projected 5th to 7th round. So, I wanted to impress him still and all my other teammates. So instead of shutting it down like I planned to and like I should have, I put myself right back into the fire, right back into training, working out, bringing all these issues upon myself.
At this point, Alex couldn't go into public without the pressure of discussing the possibility of an NFL career.
Yeah, and it was almost, and it's added to, my misery. Because, yeah, exactly. Like I couldn't go anywhere without people, saying like, oh, you're going to the NFL. And then there's other people saying like, oh, you'll never make it. So it was like, for the people who said I was going to make it, I had to prove them right. And for the people who said I wasn't going to make it, I had to prove them wrong. But just never worry about what I needed and what I wanted, which was just to be done and have football in the rear view. And it's so hard because it's like bittersweet, I guess, at the same time. Because it's like, oh, like, people recognize me. And it was more of like, I should be excited about this and I should be thrilled about this. And 1,000 other guys would be dying to be in my position. But it just added to like an endless weight on my shoulders that I couldn't get rid of, and just kept adding and adding more issues and being overwhelmed and all those problems to myself that just, said, all right, we'll just go take painkillers and get rid of that feeling and just be done with it. After that, like I said, should have been done, didn't, signed with an agent. So he sent me to Philadelphia, to go for combine training for pro day and everything like that. And, I kind of like tricked my mind a little bit. I was there for 2 months. I didn't need painkillers every day. So, I'm not a drug addict or anything like that. In my mind, people like myself from Grand Island who get straight A's and we're football stars, we don't become drug addicts. During my senior year, there was one of my friends who said, like, don't you think it's getting a little out of control? Like, told me a story like this would happen to my sister's boyfriend. Just started with this and then started taking more and then ended up getting arrested. And I was like, that'll never happen to me. Like, you don't know who I am. Like, I'm Alex Neutz. Like, we don't become drug addicts. People from Grand Island, like, it will never happen.
Friends began recognizing the signs of Alex's addiction, but when confronted, he would deny it was a problem.
Like the closest ones to me, they definitely did, for sure. And, but, in their mind, like, I told them I had it under control, so they think I have it under control. But yes, like the 2 months in Philadelphia, like I said, I didn't eat them every day. I kind of tricked myself, and I'm definitely not a drug addict. I remember I would drive home on weekends and buy a couple here and go back. And, but the second I got home from my pro day, I spent 2 months training for 1 day just to run a 40-yard dash, do a couple of drills. And then I think like 10 minutes into it, I tore my hamstring. I was immediately done, disappointed, and I felt even more depressed because I let my agent down who just wasted all this money on me, let these other guys down. I was supposed to be making money. Like, that was a money-making pit. Like, I was going to get drafted or not get drafted based on that performance, and ultimately caused me to not be drafted. But at that point, I was just like, that's cool. I'm home. I know where the drugs are. I'm just going to go get painkillers, and I spent the next 2 months just taking painkillers every single day again.
So at this point in time, with Alex being out of college and losing the access to pills he had previously, this is where he had to start paying money out of his own pocket for pills.
Yeah, I mean, probably at this point, it wasn't too bad because I was still getting by on, like, hydrocodone and, like, Vicodin and, like, lower forms of Oxy. I didn't need as many still. I was probably taking like 4 or 5 a day and stuff like that. So, I mean, like $100 to $150 would get me through the week at this point still. So it wasn't too bad, but still, it's making a dent in your pocket. It's per week. It's not like it's, it's not like I was really working that much at the time, but I still had money from college and this and that. But then same thing, so I was lucky enough to get a priority free agent tryout with the Cincinnati Bengals. And it was kind of like the same thing, Philadelphia did, tricked my mind. Like, you're not a drug addict. You're just using it because you're in pain. Like, that's why you're doing this. You just keep telling yourself it's not for depression, anxiety. I don't need it. I'm choosing to take them. And I was there for another 2 months. And I mean, that was probably the most depressed I ever was in my life, because I was just in a hotel room in Cincinnati with another football player from San Diego State. And I just hated every single second I was there. My hamstring never healed right, so I barely did anything while I was there. I couldn't really practice. I ran a few routes, and that was about it. But every day I was just like, I just need to get home. I just need to get painkillers. I remember a couple of my buddies came up for like a weekend, and I was like, yeah, try to see if you can bring any painkillers. Like, try to do this, try to do that, just to get anything there. And then, but, Cincinnati was short-lived. I was there for a few months, ended up getting cut. And like, I really wasn't disappointed. I was more excited that I got to go home and be around where I knew I could get whatever I needed.
The injury gave Alex the opportunity to put football behind him, but he explains why he went back.
And it was just that, endless struggle of still making people proud and still proving people wrong. And, like the huge draft day party, what lasted for like 6 hours just to get a call at the very end for a free agent pickup. But at that point, my agent had invested all this money in me, all my friends and family, and then paying for training on my own when I got home from Philadelphia. And there's just so many people that I couldn't let down in my mind that I just put myself on the back burner, put myself second, said, don't worry about it. Like, I just kept pushing it off to like some distant day where it'll all be over and it'll all be fine and you'll get there eventually. That's really what it was, is just, push it to tomorrow. But yeah, after I got cut from Cincinnati, that's when I just didn't care anymore at all. I was happy to be home. I went to a few tryouts at like Minnesota, St. Louis, Miami, but I just didn't really care. I know one place was going to sign me. I said, my hamstring's still bothering me. It's probably not worth it. Like, I literally told an NFL team, nah, it's probably not worth it. I'm not going to be healthy. Just so I could go back home at that point. And that's where it really started taking off with my drug issues and getting worse. So, I mean, that's when I just started taking them every single day. At one point, I tried to self-rehab. I moved to Colorado for a month. Thought I was fine. I was like, okay, I'm going to go back home. And just the second I got home, immediately went right back into them, just every day. And then I started taking, like, harder drugs. Never got into heroin, luckily, but I started taking like Opanas, oxymorphone, morphine, just basically whatever I could get my hands on, just wasting disgusting amounts of money, probably like, upwards of $30,000 in a couple months just on drugs at that point. But it was just survival mode, selling extra TVs around my house, doing this, doing that, spending 6 out of 7 days a week on the east side of Buffalo, just going to this guy's house and putting my trust in people that I've never met before that are from the middle city, east side. Like, yeah, sure. Okay, let's go. There's like no big deal, because as long as there was drugs at the end of the tunnel, that's all that mattered. As long as I could, numb myself and solve my issues. Because now at this point, even though as much as I hated football and couldn't stand it, now I'm having an identity crisis, because who is Alex Neutz without football? Like, what am I without football? Because that's all that's been tagged to my name for the past, 8 years. Nobody ever talked about good job with your business degree or good job getting good grades in school. It was all about, are you going to the NFL? Are you going to make it? You got Ohio State next week. It was never, how are you doing today, Alex? It was about football, and that's all that mattered. So at this point, to solve my identity crisis, it was easy. Just keep taking pills, just keep numbing it. But then it just started, to slope downhill. It was getting into trouble, getting robbed at gunpoint from a guy I should never trusted in my life, but my mind was on drugs. That's all that mattered. probably almost got myself and one of my best friends killed. He got beat pretty badly. He got beat up. And I was just more disappointed that we didn't get pills or drugs at the time, that I really didn't even care. I was more focused on, who can we call next, or who has something that is a little bit safer. Like, it wasn't that, wow, I just had a gun to my head and my best friend almost died. It was more, what's next?
He was robbed at gunpoint trying to go buy drugs.
So when I was dating my current girlfriend, we had moved into the Fenton Apartments, over on East Ferry over there, and like Oxford, right across the street there, the inner city of all the inner city. And I'd met this guy there. He had gotten me a couple painkillers a couple times. So, one of my best friends, was with me, and the guy was, supposed to come meet us there, bring us drugs. And then this guy that I thought I met a couple times, but thought I could trust him. But instead, he showed up with like 3 people, had guns. Immediately knew we were in trouble. But, I tried to start walking. I was like, oh, this can't actually be happening. Put my hands up and basically I don't want to die. And the guy grabbed me by the shirt, put the gun to my head, put me up against the side of the building, telling us to give him whatever drugs we have, money. Then he had my buddy lay down, started kicking the shit out of him. I can't remember if he hit him in the face or not. I just know it was all happening fast and crazy. Took all his money out of his pocket, took any drugs that he had. Then they were sitting there threatening to kill us and shoot us if we don't tell them where our other money is and drugs are. And then finally, I think it was just taking too long, and they were worried about cops coming or something. But next thing you knew, it kind of looked up and they had all taken off. But it's just kind of the same thing. When I got pulled over, and same thing. I was ready to commit suicide and away. It was just how did I ever get myself in this situation? How did I ever go from this perfect kid who never got in trouble or did anything wrong to now I'm here on the east side of Buffalo with a gun to my head? How could I have fallen so far that this is where my life has brought me to right now?
Despite having a gun pointed to his head, Alex continued his relationship with drug dealers on the east side.
Yeah, it's it's crazy how it all leads, because, there was one guy in the football team from UB that I knew who was local, who knew one guy who was a runner for he just ran to the east side constantly. And, started with, I would go meet this guy with the one football player, and then we would all drive together down to the east side of Buffalo and go to this house or that house. Then it was, the guy who was the runner said, forget that guy, you can just roll with me. And then it was me and him running every day together. And then he puts me in contact with another guy who says, forget him. And pretty soon, I'm, with the main dealers down there, and they're just, if you buy me a couple, I'll take care of you. And it's you got to take care of them to take care of yourself. And it's just this huge mess. But, it worked for me. It was, never got me in trouble before. But then I got to the point where it was starting to get tedious, and it was more energy to get the drugs than it was even worth when I got to take the drugs. And I remember I worked at Hertz at the time, and it was nice because I could take a rental car, so I had free gas, didn't have a lot of expenses, so it was easy, didn't need car insurance or anything like that. But it was, I would be cutting out. I had a 10-hour shift at Hertz, and I would probably cut out for 2 or 3 hours at a time, and I was right next to the east side of Buffalo, so I'm at the Buffalo airport, so it wasn't hard. It was really right down the street. But then, driving in a rental car the one day, get pulled over, they said the car's not yours. I was like, no, I work at Hertz. He's like, okay, prove it. I'm on the east side of Buffalo. So before I could even prove to them I worked at Hertz, they had already pulled me out of the car, searched the car, and, found a couple of pills in the car, tried to charge me with criminal possession of a controlled substance, possession of a stolen vehicle. And you think, this kid who's never got detention in his life, this should be quite the wake-up call. You went from never being in detention in your life, the perfect golden child who never did anything wrong, So now, a couple months ago, you had a gun to your head, and now today, you're pretty much in handcuffs right now. That should be your rock bottom, but, it was my first offense. Everything got dropped. There was no, okay, just don't do it again. So there's really no punishment for my issues or no real reprimand. So I was like, wow, I am untouchable. I'm just going to keep going. But then over the next couple of months after that, like I said, it was like doing odds and ends stuff to make money, selling TVs around my house. I remember literally just collecting cans and bottles and Coinstar just to get money to have drugs that day. And it was just like a disgusting, miserable lifestyle of putting drugs before food. And it was literally got to the point where I was down to like 165, looked like I had cancer, looked like I was dying, cutting everybody out of my life, wasn't going to see my parents, friends, anybody, so they couldn't tell like I was, struggling so bad. It was really to the point where I was like, suicide will probably be the easiest answer because I'm already depressed, I'm already miserable, and the ultimate letdown would be telling my parents that I'm a drug addict. Because at this point, like towards the end, like I wanted to get help, I wanted to get out of it, I couldn't take it anymore. But in my mind, going to rehab would involve telling my parents, and then telling my parents would involve your son went from on top of the world, star athlete who got straight A's and was great at everything, to now he's a drug addict who's addicted to painkillers. And I just couldn't disappoint him, couldn't let him down. So I just kept trying to figure out ways for the next couple of days, weeks. And it went on for a few months before finally, like my best friend was in town, and I told him, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, it's so much worse than you think. And then luckily, through a couple people, it got to my parents and was finally able to let them know. And, they had an intervention on my 25th birthday.
Adrian vividly remembers the events of that day.
Well, Chris came to first I saw a truck pull up, and I was on my way out, and I was wondering who's coming, because I don't know anybody in a big truck. And then I saw Chris and another friend showed up, and I knew who the other friend was. I couldn't recognize Chris at the time. And so they came in, and they said, we want to talk to you about Alex. And, I knew Alex wasn't doing very well. And that week, things had kind of gotten a little rough. And so we sat down at the kitchen table, and, Chris started telling me, he said, Alex is addicted to pills. And I just kind of sat there. My husband at that time had just come home, and he'd gone upstairs to change. And he was still up there while we sat and talked. We were almost done at that point. And then, I was shocked, but yet I was kind of relieved that we kind of had an answer to what was going on, because I'd taken him to see a psychiatrist, and they said it was just severe depression, mourning of, the loss of football being over and things like that. But now we had something concrete. And then my husband came down, and after they'd left, and he looked at me and he said, Alex is addicted to drugs, pills. And I said, well, that's what it sounds like. And he said, well, we need to call him. And I said, no, we're not going to call him. I said, we got to figure this out. I don't know anything about drug addiction. I don't know what we're supposed to do, but we've got to find somebody to give us answers. We can't just have him come over here and then there's a big blow up. This is really serious. And so I called my pastor, I called a few other people, got some advice, and, the next morning I called our family doctor, and I told him, I said, my son's addicted to pain pills, and I said, I need help. And I got an appointment right away, and I went in there, and I was emotional, very emotional. And so I told them, what we were going through, and that I needed, suggestions on what to do. And at the same time, I said, I have an addiction with alcohol. I said, I've got a problem. And the nurse practitioner said, maybe you want to get some counseling too. And so I went back home that night, and I sat down with Larry, and we talked about, what our plan was. And I made phone calls, to crisis and, detox centers and all kinds of things. So I had I had mapped out things, different options. And then we called Alex and we said his birthday was coming up. And we said, we want you to come for dinner. Can you come for dinner? And he said yes. And that was 2 days away. I think they came to our house on February 28th. His birthday was on March 2nd. And we sat through dinner quietly, eating his favorite meal. And then I said, your friend Chris came by a couple days ago, and he said that you're addicted to pills. And he got very quiet, and we just said that, we loved him, and that, we wanted to help him. And he got emotional, and he shook his head, yes. And then I said to him, Alex, I said, I had a problem with alcohol for a while. I said, whatever program you want to pick, I said, I'll do it with you. And then, we just hugged as a family and then went from there.
Since the day of the intervention, both Alex and Adrian have successfully completed rehab.
Alex's experiences with addiction and rehabilitation have motivated him to start a foundation and encourage others to open up about their mental health and addiction.
So it's almost been 2 full years since I checked into rehab and started this whole cleaning up process. But it was quite the journey and quite the slide. And I always tell people when I speak at the schools and stuff, if I had somebody who talked to me that it was okay to open up and talk about your depression and talk about your anxiety, it could have changed the outcome of everything. Just being comfortable and not having to be so tough and macho man, and it's okay to do what you want to do and stop worrying about letting other people down all the time, because it's so much easier said than done for anybody. But it really could have changed the landscape of my life, and maybe it wouldn't have changed a thing. Maybe this was my plan for the whole time, that I had to go through this so I could eventually help other people. I don't know. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad I did go through it now, because it's, now it's been worth it. Now I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I understand depression and anxiety. I still get depression and anxiety, but I know how to manage it, deal with it. That's all thanks to rehab. Because that's that problem with the negative stigma around addiction. In my mind, rehab when I was younger was like a death sentence. I was like, oh, that person's in jail pretty much, or that person's dead to society. But it's really not, because the people I met at rehab were amazing. They all have different backgrounds, and just shows addiction, mental health, depression, anxiety. It doesn't discriminate against anybody. It doesn't care if you're from Grand Island. Doesn't care if you had straight A's and played football like me. Doesn't care if you're from the inner city. Doesn't care about any of that stuff. It taught me there just how to meditate, how to be okay with yourself, how to find inner peace. And those are lessons that I was never taught in school, never taught in college. No friend, parent, teacher could ever teach me, but I learned it at rehab out of all places. So another thing I always joke around with people is about telling them, every person, whether you're struggling with issues or not struggling with issues, should go to rehab or should go to counseling, because there really are invaluable lessons that you're not going to learn anywhere else. And that really, truly did save my life at the end of the day, because, I would not be the person that I am today and as healthy as I am today without it.
So that's about where Alex's story concludes. Pretty crazy story, intense, huh?
Yeah, definitely intense, and a prevailing one. It's a common experience for a lot of athletes like Alex. So
we hear all the time about not just athletes either, though. It's almost become a universal, where young people are struggling with opiate addiction, with painkiller addiction, with all sorts of issues, just dealing with everyday life in modern society. And Alex has done a great job of taking his story and turning it into a positive for lots of people, being able to put it out in the open and to openly discuss a very difficult time in his life. So all credit to him.
So obviously what we're trying to get across here is that we see athletes every day as just like sports robots, but they're real people who deal with real issues like we do, that we don't see. And
at a very young age too. Yeah. I think that's really important to bring up, is these are children that are having to deal with these very mature issues like mental health and addiction.
So there's a very popular / famous, I don't know, athlete. I reached out to Theo Fleury, and he responded and was more than willing to come on the show and talk about his experience with abuse and addiction and mental health. He has a trifecta here, and his story is pretty crazy also. And we're gonna kind of compare the two a bit. And here's me, Bill, and Theo Fleury.
716 Sports Podcast. Real treat for us. We are joined by former NHLer Theo Fleury. Theo, thank you for joining the 716 Sports Podcast today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We really appreciate Theo coming on. And Theo has, of course, a fascinating story that we've really come to learn about over the last decade or so. And Theo, we'll talk about the on-ice stuff as well, but definitely want to talk about the off-ice stuff first. I think it's been such a courageous thing for you, fully since your retirement in 2009, to talk about overcoming the abuse that you suffered, the addictions that you continuously deal with. I think the first thing that we wanted to talk about was your the abuse when you were in your teens. I know you released Playing with Fire in 2009, and you spoke about your former coach, Graham James, in that. What have you learned about sexual abuse of children in that time since you released the biography, as well as what you've learned in the years since when it comes to dealing with this?
Well, I think it's, a typical pattern of, when people are taken advantage of, in the way that we have been taken advantage of. And first, I'll say that, this isn't uncommon. It's actually a very common experience that, that people go through. And, as we see with the gymnastics scandal, over the last month and a half, we're looking at close to, 250 girls, who were sexually molested by, the doctor. So, and, we've seen in, Penn State, we're seeing it in Hollywood, the Catholic Church, the Boy Scouts of America, so when I say it's not uncommon, it's not uncommon. And what happens is, there's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and a lot of emotional pain that's left behind from, having these kind of experiences. And so how do we cope, or how do we deal with, the aftermath of experiencing sexual abuse? Well, we tend to gravitate towards the dark side of life and get involved in addictions, whether that's drugs or alcohol or food or sex or gambling or workaholism, whatever it is that you choose to sort of numb yourself out. That's sort of the process. And we also feel very isolated, very alone, that, there's nobody really in our life that, we can talk to. And, that's what keeps the abuse in place. And that's why it takes, a long time to come to grips with, what happened to us.
Were you worried about coming forward publicly initially? Because there was and there still is, maybe it's gone down a little bit, but there is such a stigma with not wanting to necessarily believe those that are abused, or not imagining that the abusers could possibly, commit such horrific acts. Just from the moment you came forward about that, what were your initial thoughts, and how has that attitude changed or hasn't changed in that time since?
Yeah, it's definitely a scary, thing to make that decision. And, you're sort of taking a leap of faith. And, in my case, when I came out with the book in 2009, I was very apprehensive and very afraid, very scared, because I didn't know how everybody else was going to react to what was in the book. And what happened was, by finding my own voice, other people were able to find their own voice through me telling my story. And so, and that's really, when I found the purpose for my life is, helping people who've had similar situations such as myself, help them get, peace and happiness and some sort of a semblance of a life that, is free from all those addictions and coping mechanisms that we have.
Hey Theo, in an interview, you said that you're always in awe of people's courage and their vulnerability to speak out and find their own voice and tell their own story. Can you speak on that a bit?
Well, there's lots of stigmas attached to, trauma, mental health, and addiction. And that's basically the field that I work in every single day is trauma, mental health, and addiction, because all three are connected, right? And they all go hand in hand. And so the stigma is that if we reach out, ask for help, or we talk about our truth, that especially if you ask for help means that you're weak. And I don't know how that came to be, but it's actually means the opposite, that a person who reaches out and asks for help is probably the most courageous person on the planet, and that you actually care about yourself. And, that's an important first step in the process of healing, is that we find our own voice, and then we ask for help, are really, two essential things in moving forward from, the pain and suffering that, we've endured, the majority of our life. And so, to me, that's courage personified, and courage is contagious, right? And, that's been my experience. I found my voice, I asked for help, I started on a path of healing and recovery, and wow, it was amazing how many other people, sort of joined in and also found their voice and also started their path of healing at the same time.
And what's it like when you're able to find that courage and find that voice and get it off your chest? What's it like when it's finally out there and you get it out? Yeah,
it's like, the proverbial gorilla off your back, and we're only as sick as our secrets, right? And, for many years I was carrying around a lot of secrets, and I was sick emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And it wasn't until, like I said, I found my voice and got all that stuff out, there was no more secrets. And, it's a very freeing, feeling to be able to do that. And when we do that, that's the start of, this amazing healing journey and amazing healing process where we, start to have relationship with ourselves, and we're not running away, and we're not coping with emotional pain and suffering. We're actually living life and getting out of bed and looking for the next opportunity to help somebody.
Theo, as you continue on your path currently as a motivational speaker and helping those that are dealing with abuse and with addiction, is are there days where the temptations of going back to the old way is stronger than others? Is it a steady feeling, or is it something that you've really been able to kind of eradicate from your life completely?
Well, I've been sober. Let's see, my sobriety date is September 18th of 2005. And, obviously the beginning was hard. The beginning was tough. When you take away somebody's coping mechanism that they've used, for the majority of their life, when you take that away, we're very raw and very exposed. And, I was able to quickly find a daily routine that helped me stay sober, 24 hours at a time, one day at a time. And as I got triggered, as I had cravings and all that stuff, the more days that I put together, the easier it got. And then, working with other alcoholics, working with other addicts, and then, speaking about my experience and helping other people, it got easier and easier and easier. And so, today I have a daily routine that, keeps me sober, keeps me connected to people, and keeps me connected to myself. And all that pain and suffering, at the beginning of my sobriety, has subsided because I've, found other ways to alleviate cravings and whatnot. So, it's not easy at the beginning, but, over time, it gets better and better if you stay on the path.
Your musical career, you talk about addictions and things, and it seems like your musical career has been something that you've been thinking about for a long time. And I know that you released an album back in 2015 and have contributed songs elsewhere since then. But I was just curious about what your musical career kind of has brought to you as a person. It was probably not something, maybe it was. I'm curious if it was something that you always planned on from the beginnings of your career in hockey, eventually transitioning to music, or not.
No, it was, I grew up around music. My family's incredibly musical. And so, my fondest memories as a child were sitting beside my grandfather, listening to him play the fiddle. And so I was always around it. And then, when I retired from hockey, I had a couple friends in the music industry, and, we started writing together, writing songs, and I got a vocal coach and started taking vocal lessons, and, it all came together. But, for me, what I enjoy probably more than anything else is writing songs. I love the process. It's incredibly cathartic. It's how I've implemented this into my, sort of my daily routine and my healing processes. Music has become that for me, and it's been a lot of fun.
At this point of the interview, we kind of gave Theo a rundown of Alex's story and his anxiety, and how he turned to painkillers to numb all the pain and depression and anxieties that he felt. And Theo was very aware of what that was like, and it resonated with him quite a bit.
Geez. That's a typical story of, those of us who've experienced, some sort of mental health issue in our lives, right? We find ways to cope. We find ways to numb ourselves out. And, my story is no different. And I'd shared my story a couple times, with people that were close to me, back in the day, but, they were also incapable of handling, the information which I was, providing to them. But I know how easily you can, fall into that type of lifestyle. And, it's all about numbing emotional pain. And, I talked about it yesterday was, 14 years ago, I had a fully loaded pistol in my mouth ready to pull the trigger and end my life. And it wasn't because I wanted to die, but, I was completely exhausted from living in emotional pain and suffering for the, majority of my life. And I tried everything on the planet to get rid of that. And because I had a failed suicide attempt, I had to, figure out a way to live my life with, all these demons and secrets and, all that stuff. And so, it was a difficult process to go through, but, come out on the other side. I'm not saying that every day is easy, but, my toolbox is filled with, a lot better things, that I used to cope with than I used to in the past.
Now, Theo just talked about how at one point he had a gun in his mouth and was going to commit suicide, and he didn't want to die. It just seemed like the easiest way out of the pain. Alex had a very similar experience and almost said the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, because there's definitely like two different times. There was the first time during camp when my girlfriend left me. Because, it was another moment where, life as I knew it was over. This is something I'd known for 5.5 years. We're, getting married, all this stuff in our minds. And I was stuck in a place that made me more miserable. And, I had no escape, no outlet. I remember calling my mom and telling her how bad it was and how messed up I was and how my coaches don't care. And, like I said, I just went back to the drugs. And the next day she was probably freaked out about how okay I was, but like I said, I was numbing it. But yeah, towards the end of the drug part of it, because it was just looking in the mirror. I would just look in the mirror and start crying basically, because it was just who are you? I was just a complete shell of who I used to be. Like I said, I just had no goals or aspirations, and I just kept telling myself what you were supposed to be and what you were supposed to do with your life. And here you are, how far you've fallen, basically. And how, telling everybody what's really going on and admitting it all, is just going to be the biggest disappointment and letdown you could serve up to somebody. So yeah, it's just my mind just took it to where it's going to be easier to, just end it all, just call it a day, be done with it, than it is to talk about it and open up about it. I think the biggest thing is, I'm not comfortable, I'm not comfortable with, I'm not a big person of faith or religion right now. And I've always struggled with that. So, I think it was more the thought of if I did die, what would be life afterwards, and would this and that. And that's ultimately, at the end of the day, what caused me to never really, go too serious into the suicide thoughts and everything like that. It was more just, you'll figure it out, you'll get through it. But so many times it just seemed like the easiest and best option.
Now, I'm kind of going to date this interview here, but we spoke with Theo the day after Bell Let's Talk, and we asked him what Bell Let's Talk meant to him. We're sitting here talking to you the day after Bell Let's Talk. What does Bell Let's Talk mean to you, having gone through all this and your public speaking?
I think it's a really important initiative. It gives people a platform to talk about, their mental health issues. And, but, I think the awareness is great, but, we need to come up with solutions for people to, when they're ready to get help, we need to have those places in place where they can go and get help. In Canada, the mental health system has been completely run over, and we need more therapists, we need more treatment centers, we need the whole system needs to be revamped. And so, yeah, I think it's great that there's awareness, but, you know, we need to figure out how to help people, you know, make sense and, you know, help them be able to, you know, acquire this toolbox that they need to, you know, to sort of live life on life's terms for the rest of their life. And to me, it's really all about staying connected to people on a daily basis. And I don't mean texting and social media. You know, it's all about relationship. And you know, the thing that really got me through, you know, the most difficult times in my life was relationships, and the people that I was close to and people that cared about me and loved me. And so, you know, that's, to me, the next step in the process is, you know, instead of next year calling it Bell Let's Talk, you know, Bell let's get connected. You know, let's work on relationship. And you know, I think that's really important moving forward, is that, you know, we talk about the solution as opposed to talking about awareness.
Really great stuff from Theo here, and very awesome of him to agree to come on to this show and share his experiences with us. Now, Alex and his fiance are actually expecting a baby girl here in the near future, their first kid, and we asked him what his message would be to his daughter if she happened to share the same feelings about sports that he did, and she ever approached him with her feelings. So we're just going to go ahead and play a couple of uncut clips from our original sit down with Alex.
You're having a child soon.
Yeah.
What will your message be to her when she's, say if she's 8 years old, she's playing, whatever, softball, tennis, whatever it is. What will your message be to her if one day she's worried and doesn't want to go out onto the court or onto the field to play?
Yeah, I think, just definitely from a supportive angle, you know, like, but it's more like dive into it, like, you know, why don't you want to, or why are you feeling this way? More really, you know, instead of just, you know, well, get out there and do it, everybody's doing it, you know, really ask her why. And if, you know, that's, you know, if it's really something you don't want to do or it's not for you, then that's, you know, you just got to tell them, like, that's okay. Like, that's who you are as a person. You know, everybody's different and everybody's structured differently, you know, but definitely be supportive regardless of what they want to do. You know, don't let them miss out. You know, if it's just something like they're a little scared of or nervous of, you know, reinforce them, like, you're going to be great. You're going to do this. But, you know, make sure it's nothing like, and, you know, make sure it's nothing like you're going to let me down if you don't do it. You know, keep those thoughts as far away as possible.
And what's your message? This is my last one. What's your message when you go to a school or you're talking in front of a group? What's the message that you hope those kids, those teenagers, those whoever, that they're walking away with after hearing you speak?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that no matter how much you feel like you're alone, is that you're not alone. You know, there's people struggling with all this daily, everywhere. Depression, anxiety, addiction, people you don't know, people that you do know that haven't told you. Everybody's somewhere is going through it. So never feel like you're alone or, you know, you're doing something wrong because you feel a certain way. And to open up and be yourself and, you know, speak up for yourself. Don't just conform and do what everybody else is doing because everybody else is doing it. But really, you know, be you and do what's going to make you happy, and don't focus on the social media and the things and all that daily stuff that other people are doing, because they have nothing to do with your life. You know, they're not going to pay your bills someday or help you get into college or do this. Like, this life is all about you, and you need to be happy with who you are, be happy with yourself. And like I said, at the end of the day, the number one thing is you're never alone, and there's always somebody to reach out to, and there's always somebody who will help you. Like, even if the first person doesn't seem like they will or doesn't seem like they care, there's always going to be somebody else who will. And just to not give up on that idea of, you know, helping yourself.
Can you just talk about your foundation a bit, what you do, interaction with people thus far?
Yeah, I mean, so, the foundation I'm, been working on is Catch 19, the Alex Neutz Foundation. And, the main idea is to work with young adults, young athletes, and also parents, just about catching signs of mental illness, depression, anxiety, and addiction early on. I spent a lot of time with kids escaping drugs, went to their complex, spoke with them, spoke at a few events for them. So a lot of stuff I do is, coincided with them and through their organization, which is amazing. They're great over there. The big thing is at this point, just, going to schools and, talking to kids and sharing my story. The main idea is when you share your story with somebody, it, lets people feel comfortable to talk about their story and open up, about what's going on in their lives. And just show them that, I was somebody who, came from a loving background, who had everything but still felt this way. And that's just the main thing. I've definitely, had one-on-ones with kids after talks and, about what's going on in their life. And I can't tell you how many, people have texted me, reached out to me on social media, football players at UB, struggling with their own depression and anxiety issues. It just shows like it's so prevalent. And just the main thing is, ending that negative stigma that surrounds it that, if, like I said, if you're depressed or anxious, you shouldn't be. It's because that's the furthest thing from the truth. Like I said, addiction, just because addiction's not for the people who are in jail or bums on the street. This kid from Grand Island who was this football star got addicted to drugs. But yeah, I mean, the support's been great and the responses. So, hopefully I can just continue to help others and support others, and whether it's directly or indirectly.
716 Sports Podcast presents the 716 Sports Chronicles. We would like to thank Alex Neutz, Adrian Neutz, Mike Stauffer, and Theo Fleury for their contributions to this story. Today's show was narrated, written, and produced by Justin Ehrig, Eric Wolschlager, and Bill Kenny. For more information on the Alex Neutz Foundation, be sure to check out their Twitter. You can reach them at catch19_TANF. For more information on 716 Sports Podcast, be sure to follow us on Facebook at 716 Sports Podcast, on Twitter at 716 Sport Podcast, and at 716sportspodcast.com.